Well, hello everyone and welcome to the presentation on the use of the AI in the higher education. I'm Miodrag Micic. I teach here engineering design technology and I'm actually an AI user since 1998. What we will see in this presentation is that it is actually not such a new thing, but that what is the new novelty, and when it became the very popular topic is the gigantic increase of the available training sets in informations. Essentially today on the internet we have everything practically everything that has ever been written of any significance through the entire human history. So suddenly the giant, the larger data sets became available. Okay, so the presentation I titled Supervising the Stochastic Parrot, and this will be more about what the AI is and what the AI is not, and how actually can we use it and what to communicate to students. And I believe that in every class there is a place for both student and the faculty to use the AI, to use it in an ethical and responsible way. And really we need to teach students on how to use the AI, because I work with many companies and I sit sometimes at the interviews, and in the last 2 years actually one of the common interview questions for all positions, starting from the very junior level to the very senior level, is actually how the candidate integrates the AI as a productivity tool, or how he envisions to integrate it into the work. So let's start. Let's see. First, to say that the AI can think and that it will replace anyone by the tool is ridiculous. The AI is just a tool, and it is actually a statistical tool which only do the correlations and interpolations, what we will see. So Edgar Dijkstra, actually very interesting guy. If you Google him, you can find a lot of his writings. He is the father of the structural programming and also one of the early researchers in artificial intelligence, like starting from 1960s, like at the same time as Minkowski and others. He said, one of his famous quotes is, the question of whether a computer can think is no more interesting than the question of whether a submarine can swim. So while the AI give us an illusion that there is a thinking, and that there is a conversation, actually it is just a probabilistic shooting out the words based on the values of the token. We will talk a little bit, just a very little bit at the high level, how the mathematics, how the mechanics of this work, but actually it's the same as saying that the submarine can swim. Submarine can navigate water, it's propelled by the engine, and it definitely don't swim, which is a biological process of undulated motions of swimming. So, and in order to understand what the AI can do and to understand how can we do the good AI input and to accept the AI output as something valuable, so we need to understand its limitations and what it is. So the AI does not think to start with. It does not even emulate that thinking. It just gives us an illusion of that thinking. Okay, so there is a lot of, however, based on that gigantic data sets, that illusion is becoming a very realistic to the level that if you use it properly and with your guidance, you can produce extremely high quality documents which are publishable by the top publishers, like for example the Elsevier, which is the world top ranking publisher of the scientific and technical books and journals, actually now accepts the AI generated context as long, or in textual context, as long as you take the full responsibility and you edit it that is humanized. So, and we will talk about it. So AI, some faculties actually, a lot of faculties have actually some oppositions to using the AI, what we can hear, and that comes, I believe, from misunderstanding what it is and where it is going. So some of the questions, is it inherently cheating or plagiarism? And the answer to this is It can be, but if it is properly used, is not. If it is properly used, is a force multiplier, and is actually one of the best tools which will increase the equity and diversity of the population, which I will show you later how and why. But if you, let's say you have to write some essay or assignment, if you just type in, let's say, write me an essay on Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. It will provide you a nonsense article. It will provide you an article which will read like a salad of words, or which will have a bullet points of the tree and so on, which I will see. And that thing I will consider a plagiarism. However, if you structure in your head before you start using an AI, okay, this is what I want my paper to contain, A, B, C, D, E. You structure a series of the prompts and you show the reasoning either as a tree, either as a reasoning tree or as a reasoning line, then it is not cheating. It's a little bit more than using essentially the Office MS Word, where you are typing in, where you are providing the key contextual points, and it really acts as a word filler. And it especially helps the people whose English is not a first language. And that technology is now acknowledged by all of the publishers, and I will show you some of the policies of the publishers, and it's really called the hybrid writing. So we need to distinguish between the purely generated context by AI and the hybrid writing. Will it replace the act of teaching and grading? Many people are scared for their jobs, so especially not so much at the college and university level, but like at the middle school and the high school repetitive level. Well, again, I will go to the Dijkstra statement, can it swim? It cannot. So will it increase the efficiency? It will increase the efficiency. So what is this? What I would like to emphasize through this presentation is that the AI is not a surrogate author. It is just a probabilistic tool that requires your supervision. It's there really to save your time and to provide the mechanistics of writing, not to write for you. And we are here to understand its mechanics, confront its ethics, and master its applications. Okay, so actually the mathematical language, the numerical model of the human languages is nothing new. It started actually in the 17th century with Pascal and Fermat with the probability theory. And then in the 18th century, the monk actually, Thomas Bayes, developed the Bayesian inference. Essentially, that's the concept that you update the probability of event as a new evidence emerge. And he actually introduced that concept as a concept of the language. That if you, let's say, the black and cat in a sentence where there is some other animal word before, the very high probability is that if I say like, is my animal black? And then the next word will be a cat, then less than a dog, and definitely much less than a hippo, because you don't have a hippo. So essentially, that's the basic concept. And that concept works if we can tokenize the words, if we can add some numerical values, some integer values to each word in a content, essentially how often they're used and how often they're used together, and we will talk about this. So, and then in the 20th century, we have the establishment of information theory and early artificial intelligence research. And in the mid of the 20th century, we have perceptrons, artificial neurons, which are still today the basics now. First, they were implemented as in electronics as a discrete circuits, and then on the digital computers as essentially a solver of the linear systems of equations. And what they are just non-linear classifier. And what means classification? To classify if something belongs to the one set, algebraic classification, if something belongs to the set A or set B. And it hit the roadblock. The early artificial neural networks, as well as many of the models today, the low cost, the numerically low cost models, which don't depend on the nonlinear models, can't solve very simple classification of exclusive OR problem. What is the exclusive OR problem? If I have some A and B, and if A and B is true, exclusive OR is false. And if A and B are false, the exclusive OR is false. What means that statement is if the statement that something is exclusive means that they are different, exclusively different A or B. They cannot be the same. And actually, neural networks have a really bad time at doing this. So single layer perceptron can't solve it at all, because if I have like A and B with 0 and 1, let's say, or I will have here represented like those like dots, you cannot draw the line which will separate, straight line which will separate the black from white dots here. You can put some curves, and if the curve is not closed curve, again, you can have only 75% of correctness. And we will come back to this concept when we talk about hallucinations and some other stuff. The second model, the one that have those curves, is actually non-linear model. And it's obviously better than a linear model. That's introduced for something that's called the third layer in a network. And I will not bother you about how it works. It's just a brief introduction. And combination of the neural network and very simple probability, the density of probability of the next token versus previous token with a large databases of the billions of tokens of the words will create, if you say the quick brown with a 99% probability or whatever is the probability, it will be the next token will be fox. And then after fox, maybe the next token is jump, depend on the tokens, depend on the words that are in your input. So it's really a stochastic parrot. Will not go through this. So essentially they use the tensors. What are the tensors? Tensors are the multidimensional operators in a vector space, in a multidimensional space. And this is what actually happened. The neural networks were used since 60s actually in a very simple pattern recognitions. I used it in 1998. I published a paper in a Fresenius Environmental Chemistry journal with using the artificial neural network on a trained set of the gas chromatography information from the soil to identify the oil polluted soil versus native soil organic matter. So it was done in an NN plus at that time on the on the PC on the Windows 95. What changed from being an esoteric tool, which was mainly used by essentially statisticians, scientists, and people that were doing the simple like pattern recognition, like some of the early missile technologies use it like for the thermal guided pattern recognition and so on, is this gigantic explosion in the availability of the information on the internet. And the first one that actually became like with hundreds of billions of parameters and which sounded like a human, which brings us to the very basic principle of nature, that the quantity, the law that the quantity leads to the new quality. So when the quantity reached a certain critical level, it leads to the new quality. So the GPT-3, which was about the May 2020, when it was launched, was the first one of the AI chatbots, which actually sounded like the human, and which is reasonably sounded like a human to the reasonable person. So it's really a reality of the scale. So human communications, when we talk or when we write to each other, is co-constructed to build a shared model of the world based on the observable evidences, and from there on, then we create some ideation and even the hallucination as ideation. But however, the AI does not have that. The AI is a system which just stitches together linguistic form observed from the set of training data. Because it lacks communicative intent or the understanding of the meaning of the words, it's merely echoing a pattern. So that's why there was actually an MIT article which described it by Minkowski's group, whatever is now the Stochastic Parrot, and that's what I used as a title for this presentation. And the coherence and intelligence is entirely in the eye of the beholder. So, however, it does, okay, so there are also some of the issues that the AI on von Neumann computers, which requires solving essentially a lot of not only probabilistics, but also feeding into neural network with a minimum of 3 layers, which is a non-linear numerical equation solvers, requires a lot of computational time, and computational time requires an energy. So like some of and I will talk just about the financial impact here, that essentially a little increase in machine translation, in a language translation accuracy, can cost 150,000 in compute time. And training a single massive transformer model can really consume the energy of almost 300 tons of oil. So that's like the amount of oil that the large ship will take from here to go to China, you know, or to travel almost around the world. So, and then the environmental costs disproportionately affect marginalized global communities and local communities, because where you can build a power plant only in underprivileged areas. So that's the one of the thing. And then also, because it's based on the giant database. And where the database come from? Well, as I said earlier, almost everything that was ever written by the humans are scanned or digitized in the one form or another. Second, how many of you use the free emails? Well, or free search engines, where there are those things as a free lunch, especially in the 1990s, when the free email services started. What do you think how much the memory was cost when you go to buy to the Best Buy a hard drive before the memory sticks? So it was like hundreds of dollars. So why will somebody give you for free hundreds of dollars of space unless they can use? So essentially it's trained, although they will never admit, but it is essentially trained also on the entire databases of companies based under the whatever the terms of service agreement, which is 100 of pages long, which nobody really reads when it signs. So essentially the amount of data increase, and with the amount of data used, there is a lot of unfiltered data. And what it does, because it just echo what it can find out, it amplifies also the inequalities. So when you use the AI for sensitive topics, you need to weed that out by using your prompt, by actually making the prompt in a way to weed out or to disregard some of the stuff that are picked up from chat rooms and from stuff like that. So, okay, that probabilistic prediction inherently fabricate facts and hallucinate, because there is only a certain probability that my black animal is a cat. Maybe I have a leopard, maybe it is a black leopard, or maybe I'm a farmer and have a black cow. So, and there is a chance that one of these is so. And if it is a black cow, let's say, after the cow, there will be some completely other token in a sense of that tokens which will have higher probability. So essentially, it will lead to the hallucination. So essentially, because it does not carry a database, that's something else. People think that the AI system actually stores a database. They do not. The data is inherently stored into the connections of the neurons, so, and it's implicitly processed there. So, but because generative AI does not query a database of fact, it cannot distinguish between the truth and statistical truth. And what is the statistical truth? It's just the highest probability, and it can be a fiction. So it is designated to generate plausible sounding text, not factual text, and it leads to hallucination. Example, if you write a paper, you know, some of the generic AI, unless it is a specialized tool, like to the certain extent Perplexity and GPAI, you know, which takes references only from the databases of references, so it will create, well, it will just hallucinate and create non-existing reference. And actually, there are a lot of papers that were found of having those, like published in the last 2 years. So if you are using the AI for writing a scientific paper, you need to double check every reference that the AI may suggest. Because in my personal experience, about 30% of the references that the AI created are either totally hallucinated, non-existing references, or they are totally contextually not right. So you need to check it. So, and conclusions for faculty is that the AI output in a non-plagiaristic way must be treated as a starting point, that it requires human verification, and you cannot use it as a final factual authority. And this comes to another point. If you can't write this by yourself, or if you don't understand the topic, don't use the AI to sound deep or to sound, very polished, because it will create really, especially if you don't know how to guide the prompt structures, it will create something that has a deputy. What is the deputy? Deputy is a fake depthness, something that sounds or that looks on the surface very polished, but actually is a bunch of nice looking garbage under. So that need to be avoided. Okay, so however, let's now talk about the positive things. I strongly believe that the AI is the tool which significantly increased productivity. At least in my case, it significantly increased my productivity. It significantly increased productivity in many companies that I'm associated with. And here is some study of Nguyen Zhang MIT study, essentially in mid-level professional writing task, AI exposure or AI use drastically improved the performance under the condition that the person already know the subject matter. So time spent of task decreased by 0.8 standard deviation, and output quality and polishness increased by 0.4 standard deviation. And it also acts as an inequality compressor. And that's something that we as a school, which tend mainly to the underprivileged students, need to understand, that it is an inequality compression, the most efficient one ever invented. And how the AI benefited low ability workers significantly more than the high ability workers, compressing the overall productivity distribution and raising the baseline, especially in the mid-level jobs, like our students are going to, most of them. So the nature of academic works, and I will show you some of my works that I did, some of my publications before and after the AI. So she's shifting from the rough drafting and spending most of the time of drafting, of crafting, of typing, or whatever some older people still use, like to write the paper as a letters and then type it. So from that time, or this time of rough drafting, and that is compressed, that you now spend much more time on the conceptual brainstorming and really putting the outline of your publication or of your book or whatever, and then generating the small segments of content and then editing. So essentially the editing time expanded, brainstorming time expanded, because you have much more time for the brainstorming. Actually, the quality of your work, if it is done properly, will significantly increase. So essentially the takeaway is our assignment and grading rubrics also must adapt to evaluate the skill of ideation and rigorous editing, not just the polishness and the deputy. So avoid the depthness instead of the deputy, and you don't need any of the AI detection tool, and we'll talk about this later. Actually, there is a way how no AI detection tool can detect the AI content if you do the proper prompt. So essentially, what is in the workforce happening and what we need to teach in every class our students, that they must transition themselves, especially in the heavy writing classes, from builders of text to the expert supervisor of knowledge. So the traditional model is the students sit down with multiple tabs open or multiple papers on the desk, slowly synthesizing source, building their own understanding, and draft an essay from scratch. In a new model, and in writing in a law offices, in a research institutions, in a biotech company, in a aerospace company, wherever you go. So essentially you prompt AI to generate the synthesis, but you still need to build, as you synthesize this, your own understanding, and to guide that AI through the tree of thoughts for most of the problem, for some simple problem through the line of thoughts, but never as a single answer, single question to answer, so to complete the task. So, and you need to be designing for trust. So essentially, students must be taught to interrogate AI outputs, verify citations, spot logical fallacies, and edit those probabilistically generated text. They are really the editors and supervisors of knowledge, what is actually higher intellectual function than just typing, and retyping the things. So there we are moving forward. Today I will just talk about generative AI, and that's the systems that produce the outputs, and output can be a text, image, it can be a computer code actually, because this is a very general population here. I will not talk about coding, but in case on a one project that I was working as a consultant, I did the complete GUI and motor interface development for the very complex DNA extraction system in less than 15 days, what will take us 6 months to completely develop. So using the AI coding mainly, and replaced a bunch of outsourced coders, like with the one person who is not a computer science expert, in this case it was me, so was able actually to manage by using Perplexity something that will cost company probably about 60,000 if they outsource to an India or Philippines, or about 250,000-300,000 done here. Agentic AI are what's next, and those are the system capable. We already have some example like the Comet browser and OpenClaws, some rudimentary examples, which are actually able to take multi-step actions and which will actually able to type directly, let's say, into the Word or answer your emails into the email contents. So why it is so important to teach the technical skills and to embed AI into every teaching we do is because of this. This is from the latest Gartner report on the slide on the impact of the AI on. It will have an impact practically across all of the industry. The red is impact right now. And of course, the highest impact is in coding, where it was immediately, as well as in a simple office administration task like a help desk or like the customer services. However, it is expected that unlimited still impact in architecture and engineering. However, the generative design is coming big time, like the Zook 3D and some other technologies. So it will be a huge also impact in my field, in the engineering, and also in like Jose's field in architecture. And in a research, it's already have significantly impacted. You can actually use the AI because it has practically, it has access to something that was ever created by the human to actually to help to use it as a collaborator. So you really cannot treat it the difference. What confuses and what scares most of the people is it is a collaborative tool. You treat it as a collaborator, not as a MS Office tool or MATLAB or a Revit or a SolidWorks. It is a collaborator to which you talk like if you are a professor who have his postdoc or his assistant. So you talk back and forth and you evaluate the output and then you drive it through the tree of thoughts or through the chain of thoughts. And sometimes you need to use the two competing systems and create the war of the machine where you will do the arbitrage when the both systems, which are not based on the same language model, will agree on the same things. And actually you can use it that way to find the patterns, to find similarity in a data and to do the discovery of some of the new things. AI by itself never authored anything and never discovered anything, but people using AI have authored some great things, and actually there are some great discoveries, even in the areas like theoretical mathematics. Like for example, some of the Poincare conjecture was recently solved with the help of with use of the AI. That was a big news, and also like the VC flow model, which was really which was actually when the Navier-Stokes equation became like unstable. Okay, so integrate policies must adapt to a collaborative human AI paradigm. So the AI will not replace professors. Many people are scared they will be replaced. Nobody will be replaced by AI, but many people over the time frame will be replaced, including us as a faculties, who refuse to use it will be replaced eventually by the people who don't refuse to use it, who integrate it in a positive way. And this is not the first time that this is happening. This is happening since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and no tool have ever displaced a person. But the person who accepted, use the tool, may displace as well person who did not. So it is a tool. And why the people are so scared? Because this is the first time in a human history that the tool actually sound, at least superficially, that it sounds like a human. So also something we need to revise the rule of the classroom. We cannot ban probability, because Even our language is to the certain communication, although it has an intent, is built upon probability. If I want to communicate, for example, I want to communicate something from Mickey to a David, you know, like sitting here, so I can start with hi David or hello David, there is a probability, or whatever, or hey, can you do this? So there is a probability aspect of communication. So any detection tool are flawed and they are biased against minority students, and they are easily bypassed by AI generated, you know, what I will again say, deputy or sophisticated prompting. And actually its institution policy must shift from prohibition to teaching responsible attributed collaboration. Again, you don't attribute AI as an author, it's not author, but I will show you in my article later, you attributed at the end in a disclosure of the AI tools used, you know how and which tool was used. Okay, PTCDRE framework structures for the human AI interactions. You can see actually that a lot of students, I will say more than the faculties at this college, use the AI today. And one of the things that you can see in the last 2 years, essentially since the AI became the hype word, what document that each of you, or not each of you, but mainly, or if you are long enough in this position, you will see or you have seen from coming from students that increase significantly, at least at the surface inequality. Anybody?
Repeat your question.
Yes. So which document or which communication that occasionally you get from the student, you will, or that your dean get from a student, or academic office get from a student, you know, like have at least at the surface significantly better look, more polish, and look very well written. Complaints, exactly. You can see significant increase, at least at the surface, in the quality of the complaints because they use the AI to write the complaints. And the AI was trained on a lot of legal documents, so you can have a student barely speaking English, you know, to write a complaint which will cite the CFR like 101, and then you go back and you check that that law had nothing to do, which looked like a letter written by like some kind of the sleazy, you know, like the ambulance chase lawyer, and then you go back and you see that that actually law applied, for example, for a patent, and has nothing to do because it was the AI hallucinations. So the students are using it, but they are using it usually with the one prompt, like generate this, or get me a first derivative of x squared divided by ln x, or something like that, and it will not provide you the correct answer. It may provide you the correct answer, it may not, but they don't use the process actually to create a good documents, and that's what actually I teach them in my class, how to use this process. So there is several things here that I want to say. There is a universal framework for making a good prompts. And crafting the good prompts will get you out with the good results. And the PTCDRE framework is the structure for the rigorous human AI interactions. So essentially the prompt stands for P. It needs to provide persona. It needs to what is the persona? You say the AI, take a role of the engineering professor, or take a role of a lawyer specialized in a labor law. So you set up that way. Persona actually eliminates a lot of training sets which comes from, let's say, chat rooms, or which comes not from those type of the environment where that persona works. So, and then it needs to be high content with very specific instructions. So we need to define persona. We need to define very clear the task, what we want AI to do. We need to define the format of the output. Do I have a bullet points? Do I want to have a short paragraphs? And longer the paragraph, more nonsense as you will get, because the probability, because Bayesian probability work that the upcoming probability is influenced by the previous one. So the density of probability and the density of the truth will decrease in a Bayesian as you go forward. So only do, like when I do my papers and when I do for some documents that I use it, I always limit in a task and in a format, I limit its output. Something else, constraints. The AI is inherently designed to keep your time on the system, and is inherently designed to please you. to hear the answer, to have a cognitive resonance, to feel the answer that the AI statistically think or conclude that you would like to see. And no matter if the answer is true or false. So to please you with the answer. It's like some dog, and dog is actually a sick wolf, you know, that's I believe it's called von Willebrand disease. And there is a hereditary disease when some people are extremely prone to please, you know, like somebody, like no matter at the cost. So the AI has extreme case on that. So it will try to please you. So if it doesn't know the answer, it will give you all kind of nonsenses. For example, ask if you are in a math, ask the AI, at least I haven't tried that for a while, we can try today. Give me the analytical solution to the antiderivative of 1 over sine x dx. It does not exist. Okay? It will give you all kind of nonsenses, you know. But if you say, in the same, say the format, show me your reasoning and your partial differentiation, show me and constraints, say, do not invent the result, it will say I cannot solve it. So only if you tell it that it cannot solve, otherwise it will try to invent something. Okay, then you draft, so you allow AI to generate your initial probabilistic output. You edit it, you need to be expert supervisor, you interrogate the text for hallucination, you verify the sources, verify claims, and then you can actually post back your edited text and refine and prompt the AI with the corrections and with the input of the manual text. And if you are at the paid mode, and we do have actually college paid for us, the Google Gemini, as well as Microsoft Copilot, and all of the Google Labs accessories, which we will talk, like this presentation, I will disclose now, actually I disclosed at the end, but I will disclose now, is completely made by the AI made in a notebook LM. It took me about an hour to make this presentation. And I will show you how, by putting the sources and only the sources that I wanted to reference. So essentially, and it is a cycle. So the evolution of the prompts and how you became better at the prompt engineering, what is called, it's not really engineering, it's prompt drafting. So anatomy and clarity, you need to set the baseline. You need to have expectation what you want and at what level of depthness you want. You can use the linear chain of thoughts, and that means that I go from point A to point B by asking some question, then subsequent question. But much better results is if I'm going to use the tree of thoughts, when I'm branching, when I'm asking it like to provide me with a 2 different scenario, and then evaluate each of the scenario, and then come to the conclusions. And even better than that is to do the concurrent multidimensional tasking, and that's when you run like the 2 systems. Like I love to run like Google Gemini, and I have a personal transcription to the pro version of the ChatGPT, and actually I run them in parallel and face them each other in a war of the machine. And I sometimes even use, or I also use Perplexity. I have a subscription to it, which is a great tool if you are doing scientific writing, and it's the most objective for the references. And I can use, but does not provide that good of the writing itself. And I use many times Perplexity as an arbitrator between the 2 answers. And what the arbitrator does, the arbitrator arbitrates which of the answer is correct and add his knowledge. And of course, you can't do that unless you have the subject knowledge, unless you know what is coming out, because you will get, but it can save you a lot of time. Okay, in ground terms, so what is the anatomy of the perfect prompt? So persona, task, exact objective. So specify exact role. Explicit, specify exact objective, what you want it to generate, specify the context of that objective, and specify the background information, target audience, and specify the constraints, rule, lengths, limits, negative, and I will add positive boundaries, and specify the output format. Do I want bullets that I can put on a slide? Or do I want to have an essay paragraph? Or do I want to have a very simple answer? Or do I want to have a yes or no answer? Okay. So input to output is a very bad way to do it when you have just the one question and output. And that's most of the students actually, especially not the good one. You will see that their essays are created by that way, or their answers, and that they are full of deputies. So linear reasoning for simple problems will give you sequential logic. It's good also for a math problems, like, because you can actually ask it, like, you can put a polynomial and just say, develop me this polynomial, or solve me a series, show me the steps, and then you can go and ask something of the step. However, that's called the chain of thoughts. Concurrent and multidimensional tree. Let's say I have a research data, I have a FTIR spectra, and I have an, let's say, Langmuir-Blodgett film pressure area isotherm, and I have information of the molecules. I upload it all into the Perplexity, and then started interrogating what this spectral line means in a term of, let's say, whatever is that behavior observed on the, like, what this spectral line means in a transition, let's say, from liquid expand to liquid condensed state. Make it based on the literature and based in a Langmuir framework, for example. So, and then if you don't know, say, I don't know. So you kind of interrogate, and then you go back and forth, and for more complex things, you can actually do the concurrent, which I said. And one of the very interesting model that you can use, and very powerful, especially if you are generating content, if you're generating non-textual, visual, multimedia content like videos, like short videos or the images, is to use the meta prompting. And what is the meta prompting? You first create a prompt, which is very simple to understand, in which you say to a system, generate me a prompt which is going to generate me, you ask the AI, generate me a prompt for creating an image of the parrot inside the CTX room, sitting at the table and presenting a slide. Slide is attached here. Create me a prompt which I will use, for example, for the nano banana model. It will create you the prompt with all of the constraints. Then you copy and paste that prompt and feed back into the same system or into the other system that you will use to create that. Same things you can use for the, same things you can actually use for many other problems. Anytime you request some of the more complex thinking, or when you are not getting satisfactory results. So it's kind of a guiding. And the most sophisticated way to prompt is to convert it into the JSON object, into the Java object, into the Java structured object with a prompt. And then you copy that Java structured object and paste it into the AI system that you interrogate. And that works much better, and it saves a lot of trees, a lot of oil, because it's much less computationally intensive. Okay, chain of thoughts. As we said earlier, so this disentangle computation from generation through a linear sequence, and it is really step by step and drastically lower prompt sensitivity and factual hallucination. Okay, so the ground treatment of the thread of thoughts or tree of thoughts is the simultaneously development of the independent ideas with the branching, and at the end, at the converging to the output. So complex topic exploration, simultaneous development of multiple perspectives, IRAC essays. What are the IRAC essays? Have nothing to do with the Saddam Hussein. It's introduction, reasoning, argument, and conclusion structure, most commonly used like in legal research and writing, as well as in several of the scientific fields. So for introduction, reasoning, arguments, and conclusion, especially for the reasoning and arguments, this is an excellent way to actually do it. And the tree of thoughts, yeah, so for the most complex problems, strategic exploration, self-evaluation, backtracking, so generate multiple competitive thoughts, heuristically evaluate them, and use the breadth first or depth first search to navigate. So it allows you to abandon dead ends and to backtrack. And it is ideal for creative problem solving, as well as for help with the creative writing, or writing autobiography, or writing about yourself, or exploring yourself, like finding what you are, like being your own career consultant. Okay, graph of thoughts, mimic human synthesis essentially, because it allows distinct reasoning paths to intersect. Okay, so what I was telling a little bit earlier about using the two systems to actually the war of the machine, or in a more nice line to say, splitting AI persona. So essentially, you can have a helpful assistant and critical evaluator, or you can have as many helpful assistants as you want, and you have a two arbitrator and then a one super arbitrator, depending how you make it. So essentially, it forces a clean separation between generation and critique. And it can be done within the same exact prompts and within the two prompts. So meta prompting is creating a prompt itself, as I said. So for example, write the best possible prompt to analyze a research paper on fungal diagnostics. Paper is enclosed here. For example, paper is attached as a PDF. This is not the full prompt. So I will also say, take a role of the molecular biologist expert in a phytopathology of the Aspergillus funguses, then put the dot, write the best possible prompt to analyze this research paper on fungal diagnostics, and I will also put the context, let's say concentrate on the quality of the PCR primers and suggest me the improvement. Enter. It will, if you don't know, say don't know. So that will be the example, and it will create a very detailed prompt, which I will then copy and paste to the same system, and it will really create to me way better analysis of the paper and critique to it. Very good for the peer reviews, for example, like, so then if you just say analyze and review me this paper, actually it will discover way more details. Of course, you still need to read that paper and to critically evaluate it, but it will save you a lot of time, and it will help you not to skip some minute details, because the AI is extremely OCD, because it's statistics on the billions and trillions of data. It's extremely OCD. And finally, this is the best prompt that you can have, and the least actually computationally expensive, and that's to make the JSON or the structured Java object, because all of the language models work actually by converting eventually your prompt into the structured data or into the structured Java object. And here is the example, like, hey AI, can you analyze the quarterly report of Acme Corporation and identify key trends, but also summarize the risks and opportunities for the healthcare sector, and make sure to be concise and professional. And what should I tell the board about our growth strategy and compare it to our competitors? Thanks. This will create you a bunch of garbage if you just put it in. However, if you go few times and say that you want to generate it as a JSON object, at the end, this salad of word will get converted to what we have on the right side into the structure output, which will provide exact informations that you want. Again, you need to critically think. So the structured JSON prompting guarantees reliability and seamless integration, and is especially working well on making videos and making graphics. Significant difference in the spectral diffusion models, which are models which creates the images. Okay, so reliability and extraction, it's guaranteed strict output formats. It's modular. It enables dynamic injection of variables into a static template, so you don't change the template. So you can just add or modify certain portion of the JSON object in AI or outside in AI, text editor or into the coding IDE environment. It allows you to really visualize that system's workflow. And if you are working on the documents which require checklist compliance, for example, working on your unit plan, it will provide you significantly better outcome than if you just type in like the data from Tableau and say, hey, please analyze and write me what is happening with disaggregated, let's say, student data, the enrollment. So if you make it into the more structured way with the JSON prompt, it works in general much better. Okay. So building tree of thoughts and bringing all of those structured thoughts require strict environmental constraints. And Okay, so advanced reasoning architecture must be explicitly prompted to retain a narrative flow. And that's where we come to humanization. How can we distinguish between the AI, look at the AI output at the left, and look at the AI output at the right. So the left is what you will most get, and that's kind of from the not so good students, what you will get, like as an answer to a short essay question, it will be all bulleted mechanical output, and that's the default output of the AI. At the right is the same AI for the same question done with a prompt, in which prompt you say that to vary the sentence rhythm, that to have continuously narrative flow, to use the natural paces and not to use the sequence of 3. So it's a drafting assistant, again, not an author and not a final output. So it's a technical baseline that you start to edit. So if you look at the prompt, it is like architecture, persona, task, context, constraint, and format. It needs to be direct, what means I have a single task, single input, and I want a single output. Okay, so for the direct one, and that's the simplest one. If you use the direct one, that's like you want very single, you need to limit it to the very simple single input and single output. Chain of thought for most of the problems are good, linear step-by-step logic. Okay, thread of thought, and then the tree and graph are for more complex problems, and meta prompting and JSON structuring when the others don't work, so don't produce you satisfactory results, or for the creation of the multimedia content. Okay, AI lack communicative intent. Again, it's a tool, it's a stochastic parrot. It prioritizes syntactic and semantic plausibility over factual accuracy of the human intent. And this is what happened. Why? I can see, like the Supreme Court justice who said, well, I cannot define what the pornography is, but I can tell you that it is when I see it. I can tell you the same things for all of you can say the same things for the AI output. I cannot tell you what the AI output is, but I can tell you that it is when I see it. And why it is? It is because of the two things that the AI try. First, AI is run by businesses, and they try to minimize the costs. So they will first try to run it through the cheapest linear models, and they optimize to have the uniform rhythm and the uniform perplexity. What is the perplexity? Is predictability of the word choices, and with a human conversation, actually, the more intellectual the person is, the perplexity is higher. The law of perplexity, the text is highly predictable, and AI relies on the most statistically probable next words, what means that it is the law of perplexity. Okay, so burstiness, it's the variation of sentence length. If you see, most of the AI non-edited output looks like the machine gun of words or salad of words with almost identical length, and always comparing the three, and always having the problem of three things. Like there is always like the three things, this, that, and that. So that's the law of worthiness. So the rhythm is formulaic, and AI generates identical sentence structure and symmetric paragraph lengths, and completely lack the natural rhythm of the human speech. Looks like some really depressed person, who is with the OCD writing it. And that's the easiest way to spot it. However, by prompting it, you can shift it to the high perplexity and to the high burstiness. Okay, so how we spot the invisible symmetrical structures? So syntactic repetitions, so sentences are almost identical in length, and it creates like a robot. Formulaic openers, overuse of the predictable strainers. It will always start by this study, therefore, or based on, stuff like that, and zero tangentials, zero tangents, and it stays strictly in its lane, lane. It lacks the organic flow breaks and tangential puts, and any kind of the humor or any kind of the non-direct statistical correlation. So output frequently rely on the hyper-polished generic vocabulary and specific rhetorical crutches. So essentially, it has no depth if you don't structure it properly, but it has a depth, what is a fake depthness, which we see a lot in politics. So, okay, the rule of three. They chronically overuse triplets in explain examples because it statistically please the humans. Okay, so lightweight nature, mechanical flexibility, and compatibility of the wood, for example. So no academic hedging, what means the complete absence in sentences of natural scientific hesitation. Like, for example, some uncertainties like appears that, possibly, we believe that this is the, and stuff like that, and overly polished. So what I said, the surface level presented with absolute certainty, missing the nuances, authorial critique required in a real paper. So, however, the AI tools or automatic detect tools like the Turnitin, really horrible tool, and the Zero GPT, they just evaluate mathematical predictability. They cannot evaluate the truth or intent. So the highly structured academic writing is flagged. Actually, Turnitin will flag the reference if that reference appeared somewhere else. That's how dumb it is, really. And really, the only ultimate detector is the trained human eye recognizing the pattern of the machine. So, to humanize the prompt, not to be recognizable, you need to define the tone and expertise level. You need to ground the AI in a specific realities, and you need to constrain it to explicit instructions of what not to do, and you need to dictate the structure of the format. And you prompt for rhythm and burstiness. You don't want on the left, you want on the right. So in your prompt, you can say this. Actually, you can save this prompt bullet in like the notepad, have it open on the side of the screen, and every time you put the prompt at the end of the prompt, you copy and paste this. So vary sentence length and structure naturally. Keep sentences brief and clear. Limit some to no more than 10 to 20 words. Develop longer paragraphs that resemble organic scholarly prose. Avoid uniform paragraph length and break the repetition of how sentences begin. You can extend this more. You can put the band list. And remember, it will try to please you. So for them, it's much more computationally and energy expensive. They try to avoid it, but they will not avoid it when you put it exactly in a prompt. So then you continue your prompt by saying band list, or do not use the words like dwell, robust, innovative, crucial, moreover. Do not use short or length dashes, so-called M dashes. M dash as ASCII character is practically never used in writing, you know, and you can see that suddenly most of the students' answers are filled with M dashes. And the M dash for me is absolute indication of the no argument and indication of the AI used without proper prompting and forced transition words. And then you put another, and they said injection list. Please use words like natural academic hedging. It could possibly, it appears to, we believe, based on the fact, it seems to, etc. First person voice and add anecdotal side tones, specific realistic details instead of the vague examples. And for the anecdotal tones, because statistically it will not work in terms of the Bayesian statistics, you can actually inject some anecdote, let's say, compare this with that, you know, like compare, compare it with whatever. So you need to create that settings. Okay, so meta prompt example. And as I said, you can save this, the meta prompt, so you can save the prompts that you will put there, how you want it. So you can actually get, let's say, the AI output, which is not looking good. And then you can type it back and use the meta prompting, use the rewrite the following test as a natural academic essay, use a continuous narrative. The output of this will have no difference than it is output of the human, and it will pass 100% the Turnitin detector. Okay, and finally, as I said, AI is not author, It does not think anything. It did not invent anything. It's just a tool. It's a tool like MS Office is a tool, but just a tool which superficially feels like a human. The manual, edit, and checklist. You are the expert knowledge holder. You know what you want to achieve. So you need to combine and split. Manually combine short clauses and shatter long symmetrical sentence. Where's the rule of 3? So delete the third example in the AI triplets or add fourth and fifth example based on the context of your writing, and inject tangents, layer in actual domain expertise, personal insight, related tangents, which AI cannot do it due to statistical limitation. So here is the example of something I was working on. So raw AI output. Organic photovoltaics devices have emerged as promising class due to their lightweight nature, mechanical flexibility, and compatibility. What's wrong with this output?
3 examples.
3 examples. And does it sound robotic?
Yes.
Without any flavor? However, the same prompt with a same input prompt with a humanization request provides the one on the right. Organic photovoltaic devices have attracted attention for years, largely because of their potential to offer something traditional silicon cannot. Is it hedging? Yes. Is there a varying length? Yeah, I should actually post more here. And is there a conversational nuance? Has all 3 elements. You put this in Turnitin, it will show that there is no plagiarism. It's really good to avoiding repeating exact sequence because it has essentially database of everything that was ever written. So there's no plagiarism, and there is a 0% AI writing here. So essentially, then what is the authorship versus assistance? What is the very ethical boundary there? Humanizing AI output is not about disguising machine writing for deception. It is about claiming true intellectual authorship and true intellectual responsibility for your content. So, for example, Springer Nature have their AI use policy. The AI tools cannot be credited as authors because they cannot take accountability and they are not thinking. AI use must be fully documented either in a methodology section or in a disclosure at the end of the paper, and AI is a drafting assistant. And you must take personal responsibility for claims that you manually verify, manually add and check reference, and integrate your own original reasoning. And never really create the key for everything for us or for students, for everyone. You should never use AI text for something that you do not fully understand. Then you are the author. This is a tool which helps you to fill in the words inside your topic. So I'm working on some OER book. As Tor know, I think Tor is here. Yes, so we are working. Yes, so and I did a lot of extensive research on what is the OER there. And here are some of the examples of the 2 OER books, not from our school. And I intentionally, because some people may know the author, didn't put the names. And the books, both of books are good, but okay. These are from the computer science, really, computer subject, so from the IT or computer science subject. So look at the writing at the left side versus writing on something that versus writing on the right side. Which one is AI generated? Which one is not?
Left.
Left is what?
AI generated.
Okay, why?
It's using a lot of bullet points. I cannot see what these. Also, the paragraphs are about the same length.
How about right one?
Should we be concerned about the dashes in the right one?
Yeah, the right
Yes.
has a dash.
So actually the right one is the AI generated without editing. The left one is AI generated with a slight editing. Okay. And I will show you later on AI generated, which you cannot see, which you have no clue that it is AI generated. And it is perfectly fine. Both authors actually have disclosed the AI, the use of the AI and how they use it. And the books are actually great, you know. I'm not criticizing the books, I'm just showing you the difference. So the left one is a slightly AI edited, right one is the raw AI output, and you can see the M dash. And here is interesting fact, here are the image, which is actually also, this is the AI, and I can tell you this is Nano Banana by the flavor and by the fonts that use, you know, the AI generated, notebook LM generated infographics. So identify the task and humanize. So it's the identify, low burstiness, uniform sentences, AI bingo, dwell, robust, moreover, rule of three, no tangents or academic hedging, and humanize, dictate persona and rigid constraints, prompt for sentence length, ban generic vocabularies and dashes, ban the bullets, and manually break structure and inject your own domain expertise. In everywhere you need to inject your own domain expertise. So then how is the best way to write a book chapter or to write an essay? Or how is the best way the student can write an essay and get an A in an essay? By using his intellectual capacity, not just by creating a garbage from a one sentence. Distilling knowledge. Because the AI have a benefit of having practically access to everything that was ever written by humanity, but that means also benefit to all of the garbage and non-related items. So in a notebook LM, which is actually a distillation knowledge distillery, let's call it that way, you put your own sources to which your AI research and writing you want to limit. So you upload the sources that you want to use. Then you do the writing and drafting, so that's best for brainstorming, and that you do in a ChatGPT, and which we don't have at the school. If you can use the Gemini, and which we have free. You just need to link your Google account with your schools.edu account, and we can also use the Microsoft Copilot, which is really good actually, which is in your Office environment, Office 365 environment, and then you do essentially writing and drafting, and then once you write it, you in a small segments, you cut and paste that into the Word, further edit it by yourself, and then you review it. And if you do the code, you also do, that's different stuff. But okay, reviewing, and you will review it with a different system which is trained under different parameters. So let's say you wrote it in a ChatGPT or Gemini, you can use the Microsoft Copilot for reviewing. And also another great reviewing system to which I have personal subscription is Grammarly. It's more than the grammar correction tool or Thesaurus. Actually, it's a great stylistic tool. And it helped me significantly. I'm not a first language, English language speaker, and it helps me significantly to improve actually the polishness of my writing. So, and I believe Grammarly will come to these schools soon. Some other schools have it. So, generative media platforms also dramatically are expanding visual and auditory academic productions. So you can actually make your own figures, you can make your own infographics. The best actually for the academic figures are something that's called the figurelabs.ai. So, and it's actually, it can even create very factually correct mathematical figures, like explaining the vector additions, what I was just doing for my book, like creating the vector additions of the three vectors for explaining the three-phase currents, you know. It could create like explanation of how, let's say, how generator work or so on. Napkin is a great tool, and all of them have 3 layers, and for amount of work that you do, you know, the free subscription is okay. You just register yourself with your email address. Okay, so Napkin is a great for converting complex text or concepts into instant visual graphs and diagrams mainly. And then Suno is for making music. Actually, you can make the music, and you can make your own. You can make music, and you can make your own. Actually, not only the music, but you can actually also help you to improve the lyrics, styling, and so on. So every aspect. So this presentation was done by identifying sources, uploading the sources into the notebook LM, distilling them into the notebook LM, going through the distillation results, feeding them into the Gemini and into the ChatGPT, feeding it back to the Notebook LM, and then using the Notebook LM option for automatic presentation generation, but with a very detailed prompt, how long the presentation is, what I want to emphasize, and so on, and then slide edits. So essentially, everyone with the AI, there is a big parametric shift at work, at every work. And okay, this is a citation from the Rick White. He's our colleague, professor at Miracosta College in San Diego. And Miracosta is the leading actually college for the AI implementation in California. And I will say together with the Miami-Dade Community College, leading in the nation. No, they were the first one to start the AI degree, and the Miami-Dade Community College was the Miracosta started first associate degree. The Miami-Dade Community College started the first bachelor degree in applied AI technology. So, and Rick is also into a biotech world. So, and this is the standard org chart of the future is really going to blow up. You are not going to oversee people. You are going to oversee the workflow. So essentially, you are extending, you are not going to be, let's say, a programmer who just code in Python or COBOL or C or Fortran or whatever it is. You are really acting like a software development manager. So, and you are overseeing, and the paradigmic shift is from managing people to managing the workflows. And that is also need to happen in education inside in our classroom. And it already has happened in my classrooms, and I will talk about. So, this presentation was built by the expert and the slave. The expert was the ChatGPT and a little bit of the Gemini. So, and this was where you design like what you want, designing the 90-minute blueprint, defining the pedagogical arc, the generating optimal command. The slave or the execution workhorse was the Notebook LM with its ability to actually create presentation and to further distill the findings of the ChatGPT's bullet points only to the content and within the framework of the references that I put in. So you map the cognitive blueprint. So as a tool, philosophy, technology, pedagogy, demonstration, and the question and answer at the end. You engineer the source pack. The source pack are your references. Like if you're writing a paper, that's the references that you start, as well as some generic reference like review paper or the textbook on a subject. And you limit with the Notebook LM only to work in a content of your source pack. And then you go for a master prompts. And there was a more. I will show you actually the whole process. And essentially here is I created this infographics, like how you go from the master prompt. Then you combine it with a source pack into the Notebook LM, which act as a machinery, as a production machinery. And from my 37 diverse sources, at the end, that distillation machine went through the process of tokenization and probabilities through the tensors, like an operators in whatever n-dimensional, million-dimensional space of vectors, and then it created the stochastic parrot at the end, output this. There is zero hallucination here, everything was reviewed, and 100% the output is grounded on the fact and on tokenization of the source pack. Not from what somebody said in some Reddit or in some chat channel. And finally, I am humanizing the final output. And here is, for example, the prompt, which I quite often use. So, very sentence structure, introduce intellectual hesitations, add nuances, avoid overuse of generic vocabulary, and you just save this on a side, and every time prompt for generation you copy and paste this at the end of your prompt. That's the constraints. The academic expertise, your US expert remain the essential supervisor. And again, without supervisor, the AI will not come by itself. I want to research, let's say, behavior of alpha-synuclein in a cell membrane. That's you who came up with the idea. And you came up with a strategy how to do it. And the data was generated in some lab, but you can use the AI then to analyze it, to structure it, and to formulate it the way how you want it, essentially as a writing tool. And it's really a mathematical mirror, or statistical mirror, better to say, reflecting our collective digital history, complete with its brilliances, biases, hallucinations. And it is the workflow accelerator that compressed the effort of drafting, not an oracle of truth. And I can see who can tell me in this slide, I forgot to humanize one aspect. What did I forgot to erase here?
The dash.
The dash, the long dash, exactly. So, okay. And again, I don't think that anybody should be scared for its work. It will not replace us. It will not replace the customer service agent. It will not replace engineer or architect. But people are self-replacing itself by avoiding to use the tool. I know long time ago at University of Miami, there was a professor who refused to use, actually a chemistry faculty, very senior one and very well respected. He refused to use the word processor. Well, very soon he came to the position that he was not even able to submit the articles like around 99 to the journals because they will ask you for what? For the Word document. So that's like self-exclusion. And there was a lot of push in 90s with the introduction of the reasonably good word processors within the MS Office, the Word, and before that, even with the Word Perfect, and before that with the Word Star, with the grammar, and with the Thesaurus tool that the students cannot use it. Well, now that's widespread accepted tool, but we teach them how to use it, This is really a word processor which act like for textual context generation, which act like a word amplifier. And if it is used like that, I don't see any problem. Actually, I give them an extra credit when they use the AI and when they disclose the AI use. And in my workflow of SolidWorks, actually, the AI is coming into the drawing generation, into intelligent mates, into the possess workflow. The AI is coming with the generative design in the Revit, so that it is also coming with automatic generation of 2D drawings from a 3D models. And in a David world, it's coming a lot with a GDT, with the actually on cleaning up your 3D model to create perfectly compliant drawing for your manufacturing processes. And in my world also, besides SolidWorks in electronics, now you have the systems which can actually design, which can automatically generate for you the schematics for a very complex systems, as long as you know how to describe input and outputs, what you want and constraints. Okay, so this will be my formal presentations. Let me now show you how this presentation was generated. And then I will show you actually some of and we can have questions and answers or practical things. Just let's see why I cannot move this. So, okay, can move it from here. So let me just change to the Gemini. So let's see, where is the Gemini? The napkin.ai, that's the Figma. Figma is for making the website. Okay, one of the place for anyone that want to start with one of the place that you want to start exploring the free Google AI is way more just beyond the Gemini. If you go to labs.google, you will come to a lot of really great tools which they are introducing. And there is right now, the best tool that we have here is the Notebook LM. But however, there are some other tools that are coming soon. There is actually Notebook LM for Educator, which have a different name, like Learnit. So this is the one of the places to start with. And let me see why I cannot change I want to change to some other here tabs. Let me circle through the tabs here. Let me find you the tab with the actual. That's not the LM. Okay, that's the ChatGPT. We will go to.
I guess the next one has this.
Oh, no, this one here. No, that's the Perplexity. Okay, here. The notebook LM, and then let me put this back to the. Okay, so let's see where we are here. So the notebook LM are organized into the notebooks. No, this is not, this is this is not an LM, so that's the other one. Let me find the notebooks, just a moment. That's something that I was going to show you in a moment. Here, notebook LM. Okay, so when you log into the notebook LM, that all of you, it's notebooklm.google.com, you add the source. So you add the source, and here we have an example of what is my source. This is for the world of electrons. That's for like chapter for my textbook that I'm working on. So you add the sources, and then you distill it, and then you transfer the distillation results. But let me show you my notebook on the AI for Educator presentation. So here is the AI for Educator presentation. So you add the sources in a source panel from here. So, and here are all of the sources that I added that I wanted to create this presentation. On the right-hand side, here you type what you want to get as a result. So here you type your prompt. And then on the right-hand side is your studio. And in a studio, actually, you can say how you want what you want that prompt to create. You can create a podcasts, which are very good quality podcasts, which you can directly integrate into the canvas. You can create a video overviews. You can create a mind maps. Actually, let's see, I have it already there actually. So you can create a flashcards and so on. So let's see actually something here. Let's see the spot on robots. So the small video presentation that was created here. Let me play it. How to spot the AI. Let me just see why I'm not getting the. Oh.
That line is getting blurrier by the day, which leads to the big question: can you actually tell the difference anymore? See, human writing and AI writing, they just have a different feel. As you can see right here, human writing tends to be a little messy. The rhythm is very kind of like a natural waveform.
And we hear echo because of our system. It's not with echo.
Almost too predictable, like a perfectly repeating digital signal. It's just a little too perfect, a little too. So take a guess. Which one is the robot? Well, more often than not, it's going to be the one that feels too predictable.
So the quality is good enough that you can actually put it on a YouTube. You can directly integrate it into the canvas.
You can spot them too. So what are these?
Let's go back to the studio. Let me show you some other things. So. Okay, so let's see why I'm now at the problem of having the echo. Let me mute myself. Okay, can you hear me now better? Hello?
Yes.
No, they cannot hear me now.
No,
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, you
better.
can hear me, okay? All right, so let's see now something else here. So let's see some of the stuff else. So that's the video generation. Okay. Here is the table, the data table with the sources and with the statistical probability of the sources and where it comes from. Like that's my ChatGPT entering. I also use from time to time DeepSeek, although it's not that great of the system, but for cross-checking some stuff, you know, and as I said, for the arbitration. So let me show you some other stuff that you can get here. So that was the AI flashcard you can use in teaching. So here is you can use them to make to break your lectures and to make like the simple quizzes. And this was like about define, let's say, term perplexity, define term burstiness that we covered today. So, okay, so let's see the next one. Oops. Go back to the studio. Okay, so let's see. You can automatically create a quiz. And the quiz questions, you can actually directly copy into a canvas. You can export them as an XML file, and you can directly copy into a canvas. Again, I'm thinking about creating an online module of this presentation, and that's why I put some of the questions and stuff. Okay, so you can actually do the, okay, so let's see, that's the table. Okay, so here is the, let's see what is here. So this is the infographics, like the big panel that you can create. And here is one interesting thing, that when the image is created, it is done by spectral-based technology called the spectral diffusion. So the text is actually, earlier image models, if you ask the text, had really poor manage of the font. But also if you zoom in, you can see that this is really not a font. It's the image generation by diffusing of individual pixels. And actually in that process, if there is a lot of information, it loses sometimes the wording. So look at this, caps whatever, no track here, error. Yeah, so, okay, so, but also you can find here and there some of the words which are not correctly spelled because it's completely different. It's not written as a word. This is, and the AI generated images are banned by the journals and magazines, especially after scandal with that fake biological papers of that mouse, you know, that was from Korea. So you cannot use them, and you cannot use them in publications. Why? Because the AI, because it does not guarantee that it's not copyrighted work, and second, they are really not editable because they are just a spectral diffusion, so based on similarity of the individual dots. But for most of the work, like presentations or for the OR books, you know, they are good. If you want to publish something with Elsevier or Springer, you can give this to a graphical designer, or you can be a graphical designer and use this as a template to redraw like a vector graphics or whatever they, or Photoshop file or whatever they request, but it will not have by itself the AI. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. So that's the infographics. Of course, the slide deck is the most useful. And to generate, to put the exact prompt, you click on the prompt. So let me show you actually some of the slide decks here that we have. So here, yeah, the study guides are another assemblies that you can have, like the further negotiations of the things. So here is the study guide created. Let's go back to the studio. And it takes some time for all of this to be created. Okay, so here are the other videos. Yeah, so for example, okay, supervising the Stochastic Parrot. Here is my presentation, the original presentation, and then you just copy it and edit it. You can actually export. We have a free Pro subscription. With a Pro subscription, you can actually go here and you can export. You can download it as a PowerPoint, and you can edit it in a PowerPoint content. You can't edit text directly, but you need to place a text box around it. But you can edit it as a slides, yes, so you can, and you can add your own. Okay, so that's about the notebook LM. So, and we are kind of coming towards the end. So I would like to open this for the discussion. So again, it's a tool. It's not going to replace anybody's job. We should teach in every class within a context of that class how to use it properly and how to use it to enhance the productivity. The students at the companies where they are interviewing, you know, they will be asked about the workflow and how it relates to their job or to their life, you know, and bottom line is we cannot get caught that the students know more about using it than us. Okay, with this, I will end this presentation and open for your question. Thank you for attending. Okay, any questions? Comments?
So these slides are also, the text is also image, it's not.
The text is an image, that's correct. And okay, with a caveat, I believe at the next level, we have a free pro level. There is another level that you can actually export it as a text. But text in this version is an image. And that's but what you can do, because it's a standard Helvetica font, actually, you can just like put the text, you can put the box and use the text box to replace it. Or you can export just the native text, you can export from this window, you know, like so, and you can just go and recreate your own slides if you want to.
What I've done before is I've used, I created those large images with, with individual images and text.
Okay.
And then in InDesign, I cover the text with the same color as the background and just rewrite the text.
That will work. That will work. And for the academic publishing, if you want to send an article or a book, you will need to redraw actual or like, because they can immediately detect the presence of the spectral diffusion of pixels.
I started using AI in my classroom and started the discussion with my students. I was very worried in the beginning, with this idea that AI is a game changer. There is no question that it has changed the environment in which we do our work. And I realized that unless we follow your advice, which is embrace and figure out how to teach students to use it properly, we're going to be left, behind. And this semester in particular, I haven't instructed prompting in class, but I have done it with students that come to office hours, and they are blown away by the capability of this technology to help them understand topics. So something very practical that I just want to share with the faculty at this meeting that I have learned is that mathematical documents are very difficult to edit, because you have to write equations with an equation editor, so LaTeX or whatnot. But you can generate with Gemini a review. I enter the title of the textbook I'm using, the sections I want to use, the topics I want to emphasize, the type of context that I want. I emphasize the audience that I have, some of the challenges my students have, and I said I want 12 questions with these parameters. And then it creates a nice, gives me something like that. I said, well, to change that into a Word file or a document, it's very time consuming. So I've just learned to ask it to give me a code snippet that I can upload to Overleaf to generate
all the LaTeX format.
And in LaTeX, and that is a game changer. The worksheets that used to take me 4 hours to generate, I can generate in 15 minutes. And I can have a different worksheet for each section if I am concerned about students just sharing answers or whatnot. It is truly has been a revelation. So asking Gemini not only generate these problems, but then give me the snippet so that I can create a PDF that then I can edit, because we have access to Adobe Acrobat with all its features for free. It is something that I think we need to continue to explore and sharing with the students what are the proper ways that you can benefit from utilizing this technology.
I'm so glad to hear this, that you are doing this in a class, because that's exactly how it is going to be. And I'm glad that you are using the LaTeX and that you are using the tech format, and Overleaf, which is standard industry tool for physics, for mathematics, for even some of the engineering work. And let me just show something here for the benefit, where you can also use it not only for like typing it, but you can actually use it even for proving the mathematical theorems and even discovering some new stuff. Let's ask something very simple. I mean, simple but complex for students. Let's say some problem from the linear algebra. How about this? Let's say prove that matrix adjuncted A plus AJB is equal, that it is a linear operation, adjuncted A plus B. Okay. We'll take a role of an expert linear algebra, linear algebra mathematician. Okay, and
And say
show me step by step reasoning of the proof and validation of the proof. Show me in this windows, show me in this window. Look, and also export as LaTeX format. Let's see what it will do. Okay, so
You need an invertible matrix, is that
Yep.
what it needs? You needed to clarify some of the parameters.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it will this work for only certain classes. Okay, it does not. Yeah, it's not a general proof.
But
Okay.
if you go down it, I'm curious if it shows you the code,
Yes.
validation of the counterexample.
Okay.
Yeah, to write that, all those symbols that you're seeing.
It's
is very
so much
time-consuming.
time, and even in a code is extremely time.
But look at
Okay,
this.
here is the LaTeX
This
tool.
is the game changer
Yes.
right here.
But also the game changer is that if you use the tree of thoughts, and I know I'm not doing mathematical physics, but I know colleagues that are doing mathematical physics and kind of like borderline the higher end linear algebra, you know, but they are using it, and actually they are deriving proofs which are publishable in like physical review letters. You know, what is the most difficult journal to actually pass the theoretical physics paper without any experimental validations? No, actually, and as I said, the VC flow was solved this way as one of the Poincare conjectures. So it's a game changing for every industry. It's a game changing for a doctor's office. It's game changer for the engineering. It's game changing for the theoretical mathematics. It's game changing for the marketing people doing analytics. It's a game changer for us writing the unit plan, which you can now write in literally like 2 hours instead of spending days.
Yeah, no, I think that something that I'm thinking as the result of me attending this workshop is that I want to continue this conversation within my department, where we share very practical examples of these applications and what are some of the possible ways in which we can assist our students to use this tool effectively, not to write a problem like here's the equation and I need you to solve it, but to be able to say, I have learned that the more specific I am with my prompt, the better quality of. So I have played the role of a student many times.
Yes.
I am a first semester calculus student, and I have some gaps in my understanding of algebra concepts like factoring and trigonometry.
Yes.
But I would like to understand. We're learning about vectors, and I would like to understand how to break a force vector into components. Can you give me 3 examples and let me work on the 4th one and submit my answers for your comment? It's been amazing. You know what? And when I share that with my students, I can see their eyes go like, this is like a tutor that I can have 24 hours a day that is infinitely patient and that will never make fun of you, and it will never roll his eyes because you ask a stupid question. It will clarify, and if you learn to do this, not just to engage with in conversation, you can get something very valuable to you. But students must understand the double-edged sword element of this here, because the temptation will be when you're tired and when you don't have the time that you're just going to upload the quiz and get the answers and get 100% on something you don't understand. Well, if you're lucky and there's no hallucinations.
Yes.
But I think we can make this argument for our students. I think we must make the argument that we need you to develop, the world has changed, and you're not going to get paid to do integrals or to graph parabolas or do derivatives. You're going to be paid to solve problems with the tools that are available.
Exactly. And this helps the student because it generates the knowledge at the spot. It goes, if you ask it like, if I didn't ask it like, show me the proof, it will just give you like very short answer. But when you break it down, actually generate in front of you, you see actually the knowledge generation, that thinking, whatever, statistical thinking going behind, which is most of the time correct, but it's up to you to accept is it correct or not.
Right.
So you need to know something about linear algebra. I don't say I'm expert in it. I know a little bit, but I mean the people that really in the mathematics, it is a really big game changer also for typesetting documents. You think that, for example, for me or for architecture to write a paper, it will take you like a few days. For them, just to really make that draft because you are coding it literally in a LaTeX, it may take months. You're literally coding equations.
Yeah.
I'm so glad, and if you need me to come sometimes to give some talk or something or questions and answer, I will be more than happy to help your department and stuff. Yes, so because that's great, and that's exactly what the student needs. You can use this in a history, you can use this in a literature, you can use it in absolutely any subject you can imagine. Okay, so let's see some of the questions from the audience. Anybody? Hello? Any questions? So we have some chat questions.
I just wanted to ask you, do we have access to your presentation?
I will make it available, and this is a recorded, and I will also send you a presentation. I don't know how. Whoever wants to send me a presentation, please send me an email, micic@cerritos.edu. Yeah, so I will try to also post this. I know that the CTX will post it. I will also post this on my YouTube channel, which is DRMICIC at YouTube, or I will post, or Professor Burro at YouTube. That's me.
Professor what?
Professor Burro, the donkey.
Okay.
That's the nickname that I got from some of the students that I'm very stubborn, so. No, but it's the drmicic@aol.com. If you look at the YouTube, you come directly to my channel.
If your name came from your Mexican students, maybe they were messing with you. We use the word burro.
It was from a Latino student.
Yeah, the word burro has a different context. Not just stubborn, but sometimes burro is someone who is not very good at school. Yeah.
Oh.
Somebody who doesn't learn. Who doesn't learn well.
Hey, Mickey.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. So
yes, thank you. So any questions, anybody need anything, I am accessible. You have also a great resources here. We have our committee for the subcommittee for the AI.
I think you have a question.
Yes, question?
I think it was Monique.
Oh, Monique.
yeah, I was just gonna say thank you, Mickey, for doing this presentation. It looks like we don't have any questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
Thank you very much for coming.